Ah, the dreaded underbid job. Every handyman knows all too well when you get to the job, you start in and you realize, this is going to take a lot longer than I expected. Nothing quite saps the energy and excitement out of you more quickly than this realization. Well, I'm here to tell you that it is possible to increase your accuracy almost perfectly by following the steps I'm going to outline today. These steps may take a little bit of time up front, but I guarantee you'll see an increase in your accuracy in estimating jobs. Hey, this is Matt with the Handy Manual. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to walk you through an estimate calculation to replace a kitchen faucet, assuming that I only have a little bit of experience in doing this kind of job, but no idea how to price it. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to exclude materials and supplies and just focus on getting the labor price as accurate as possible. Okay, so quickly to note, in my opinion, it makes more sense to charge a flat rate versus an hourly price. In my experience, charging by the hour hasn't been a sustainable pricing method. There's too many variables that can make the job take longer, and when you present the final bill to the customer at the end, they may give you some flack. Also, flat rate pricing reduces bird dogging, which is when a client is kind of watching you more intently to make sure that they're not getting charged for your breaks and making sure that you're working diligently to get the job done as quickly as possible. The customer knows how much they can expect to pay at the end, and if you complete the job quicker in the amount of time that you estimated for, that's just more money in your pocket. All right, so let's get into these steps. So step number one is to calculate your break-even labor rate. Now, your break-even labor rate is the minimum amount you can charge in order to recover the money that you spend in order to provide this service. Once you calculate this number, we'll then add a profit margin to it based on how much you want to profit on each job. All right, let's head over to the iPad and we'll do these calculations. All right, so the first step in calculating our break-even labor rate is to calculate our total annual cost of doing business. And that's broken up into two components. We have our total labor costs and we have our total overhead costs. Now, obviously, if you're a self-employed handyman, you're just going to have your own salary as an expense. Now, if you have an accounting software, you can just pull a profit and loss report from that software to get all of these numbers from the last 12 months. And if you're new in business, I want you to estimate these costs based on these line items here. So starting off on the left-hand side, let's say that we make $50,000. Okay, so that's for the labor costs. Now over to the overhead costs, breaking these down into banking and payment processing fees. That's basically any banking fees or ATM fees and credit card processing fees when you're taking payment from clients. Then we have professional fees, and that's any services you hire out. So maybe it's a call service or the fees that you pay to your accountant. Then we have advertising and promotion, and that's online ads like Facebook or Google or other paid marketing that you might have throughout the year. Maybe if in the slow season you run some ads to generate some leads. And then on the promotion side, that's like business cards or flyers, things like that. Moving on to insurance, that's like general liability insurance, vehicle insurance. Technology, that includes phone expenses, any software subscriptions that you have, website hosting, stuff like that. And disposal, I think this is pretty relevant to a handyman. I know that for myself it is. Any disposal fees that you might have if you frequently make trips to the local dump to dispose of whatever it might be, doors, wood, trim, stuff like that. You want to include that. Then your vehicle expenses, that's maintenance, repairs, oil changes, gas. And then lastly, we have supplies and tools, and this excludes any cost of goods, materials, and tools. So supplies meaning masks or boot covers, gloves, stuff like that, maybe paintbrushes, roller trays, as well as equipment rentals and purchases, office supplies, permits and licenses, annual dues like your business's annual report filing, and other miscellaneous charges. Now I want to note that everybody's business is different, so your numbers might look a little different than mine, but I'm just going to go through and start filling these in. Also to note that these categories aren't a comprehensive list, so if there are other costs that fall under your overhead costs, make sure to include those too. But we're going to go ahead now and total these numbers. So we're gonna then add our total labor and total overhead costs, and that'll give you the total cost of doing business. Then what we want to do is divide our total annual cost by the number of weeks to get our weekly cost of doing business. And there we go. We have $1,282 it costs us per week to run our business. All right, so now that we have that calculated, we're going to move on to the next step, which is to get our average billed hours per week. Now you should be able to pull this from a report in your scheduling software, and you want to get your total billable hours for the year, for the last 12 months, and then divide by 52 to put it into weeks. Now if you don't have a report that you can pull those numbers from, just estimate roughly how many jobs you did for the last 12 months, and then estimate the average job duration, which for a handyman I'd say is typically around 2 hours. Then multiply those together and divide by 52. So our total billable hours for the year comes to 832. We divide that by 52 and we get 16 billable hours per week. Now this will vary for everyone. Every business is different. Some weeks you'll work a little longer, some weeks you'll work a little less, but this is our average. All right, so moving on to the last step, we will calculate our break-even labor rate by dividing the cost of business by the billable hours. So 1282 divided by 16 gives us about $80 per hour. And again, these rates will vary for everyone and every business is different. There's no right answer, but this calculation will hone in on the minimum you need to charge in order to sustain your business. All right, step number 2 is to calculate your target labor rate by adding your desired profit margin to it. A good range to shoot for is about 10 to 15%, with 10 being average, 15 being good. So let's aim for 12% on this job. All right, so we'll take our $80 break-even rate, multiply it by 1.12 for our profit margin, and we get 89.6. We'll round it up to $90. So this is your target labor rate. This is what you need to charge in order to sustain your business and make some profit. Now with this calculated, the other component of estimating a labor charge is figuring out how long the job will take you. And that's arguably the most difficult part in the estimate. So in order to do that, step number 3 is to deconstruct the job. By this, I mean envision every possible step and action you have to take on the job to complete it. This is how we'll get as close as possible to the actual time it takes you. So let's walk through all the steps to replace this kitchen faucet. Think about setting up the job, gathering your tools from your truck or your van, bringing them inside, maybe laying down a drop cloth. If your truck's a little messy, maybe accounting for the time that you have to spend looking for tools and gather them all up, bring them inside. If the client didn't remove the cleaning supplies and all the stuff that they have underneath the sink, you want to include time for that. Getting underneath the sink, turning the water valves off, and disconnecting the water hoses. Then loosening the nuts on the mounting bolts of the faucet. And this can often take the most time in replacing a faucet. If it's an old faucet, a lot of times the nuts are corroded and it takes a lot of force to get those off. And you want to account for some time too, if you need an additional tool from your truck to get up and go out, walk outside, come back in. Disconnecting the sprayer line if there is one, as well as the soap dispenser, and wiping off the openings in the countertop where the faucet was if there's any crud on there. Taking the time to peruse the new faucet's instructions to make sure that you have all the bits and pieces where they need to go. Installing the new faucet with the water lines through the holes in the countertop, tightening the nuts on the bolts of the faucet, and connecting the new hoses. Attaching the new sprayer line and the new soap dispenser, then turning the water back on and testing for leaks. And then finally, cleanup. You want to wipe up any spills, vacuum any debris if you need to, and remove any boxes in the old faucet. Assign how many minutes you'll think it'll take you to complete them. So get the total number of minutes and divide by 60 to put it into hours. And if you're still unsure, a good rule of thumb is to add a 10% markup to the total amount of hours. So just do that by multiplying the total amount of hours by 1.10, and that'll add a markup for you. Now multiply the total number of hours by your target labor rate, and that's it. you got your number. Now, I recommend building a pricing book, so all you have to do is do this once for each job that you intend to add to your book. Gradually add jobs, and over time you'll build a solid pricing book and remove the stress of pricing decisions from your business. Year over year, you can increase your prices in bulk in a spreadsheet and upload them to your estimating software. Well, there you have it. This is the method that I use to price my jobs. And while from time to time I occasionally underbid jobs, my accuracy has significantly increased and I'm enjoying a higher profit margin in my business. If you want to get a sense of how your prices stack up, I recommend calling other handymen in your area. Just pose as a customer and ask what they charge for specific services. Be sure to comment below and let me know if you found this video helpful. Until next time, take care and be well.